Another patch for the Helm mod has finally arrived. With it comes a bunch of new weapons, some trinkets, 2 new armor sets, and a whole lot of other changes. Like always, I'll be giving a brief overview of the additions. If you want to read the whole patch note list, I'll put it down in the description. Starting off with weapons, we have the Adventurer's Pickaxe. This mining tool helps you collect additional loot from your foes. Each swing has a chance to produce scrap or material drops. Charge attacks increase the likelihood of getting higher quality drops. What does the drop table look like, you might ask? Well, it looks something like this. Big thanks to Ori for jotting down the information. Look at those survival drops too. Finding this weapon there can net you a lot of traits and potentially some gear. Next up we have Aegis. This plasma pistol is a medic's best friend. It's a hit-scan handgun, sitting above the repeater pistol in terms of damage and fire rate. Its mod, Guardian, is a 2-in-1 support and debuffing tool. It's fired like an explosive shot, marking all targets within 4 meters. Friendly targets receive a buff for 15 seconds that does 2 things. The first is health regen. The second is a whopping 40% damage reduction. However, this second part has a caveat. It tapers off over the duration. This makes it a powerful oh shit ability for you and your friends. Right before something powerful hits you, blast it at your feet. Timing it right can be the difference between life and death. Enemy targets take a bit of damage, suffer a unique bleed dot, and deal reduced damage for the duration. This status can stack with normal bleed for an even stronger Bloodletter's lifesteal. At the moment, it does seem to be affected by the concentration trait, but not other sources of mod duration buffs. The Boom Hammer is a hammer that explodes. Charged attacks cause an explosion that damages enemies within 3 meters. This synergizes with Vulcan's, Cryogen, and the new Boomer set, for when your explosive build needs a little more boom. Hammer of the Headless is a weapon stripped directly from the Corsa Swamp Knights. It has the unique ability to be thrown when letting go of the neutral charge attack early. This thrown hammer does a ton of damage. Like other ranged melee sources, however, it does have its limitations. The first is the stamina cost. Since you need to perform a neutral dodge first, you'll essentially be consuming what would normally be 2 charge attacks from the Hero Sword or Mantis Claw. The second is aiming. The hammer is affected by gravity, and drops off slightly as it travels. You'll need to practice aiming a bit higher at more distant targets. The third is armored hitboxes. It's pretty common that you'll be hitting enemy armor spots, like the helmets on the Romburi. You may have to tweak your aiming depending on what you're fighting. The nice part is that you can still hit weak spots. Critical weak spot hits with this hammer deal omega damage. On top of that, they also deal 5 times stagger damage, making every throw hit like a truck one way or another. Iskal's Embrace is the scythe from the Queen herself, featuring a unique moveset that offers both ranged and AoE attacks at the same time. The regular charged attacks shoot out her beam projectiles, the third of which can be cancelled early to perform a different attack. In this case, the Ground Rupture move she performs in her second phase. These attacks do use stamina, but they all deal exceptional damage, and help you out in a variety of situations. Trogdor's Song is a fully fledged flamethrower. Replacing the Burninator Alternator, this weapon lets you scorch the battlefield. The primary fire is like the Spitfire's mod, and can apply burn dots. The mod is a revamped version of the Burninator. It launches a fireball like Singe's, and it grows in size as it travels. On impact, it creates a 3-meter wide blast that deals fire damage and applies 3 stacks of burning to all targets. As you can imagine, this pairs really well with the reworked Charcoal Necklace. You can also spray at the floor to create small pools of fire, burning targets that walk through it, including yourself. For the last new weapon, we have the Iskal Glaive. This basic melee weapon is a mix of multiple weapon movesets. It may seem sad that it lacks a mod, but it more than makes up for it in raw damage. You can seriously rip through even the toughest of elites with this thing. Moving on to the armors, we have the Boomer set. This bulky body armor specializes in explosives. Each piece increases your damage with explosives by 10%. You also become immune to the damage and stagger from your own explosions, as well as explosive friendly fire. This lets you safely use explosive sources like explosive shot, hive cannon, etc. Keep in mind this only covers the initial blast. Lingering effects such as frost clouds or fire will still damage the player. As always, running Vulcans or Cryogen can help boost damage or give utility to your blasts. Give it a try, and let me know how you feel about the set. With the removal of Velocity Core, the Sentinel Set has been created to fill its role. Since patch 1.2.2, the set has been tweaked and performs much more evenly across every difficulty. The set passive is a general damage reduction that increases per piece equipped. The bonus itself increases your fire rate and reload speed at the cost of being slowed down or locked in place while aiming. The first two tiers reduce your aim movement speed by 33 and 66% respectively. The final tier locks you in place. These first two tiers can actually be partially counteracted by sources that boost aim movement speed, like Pillar of Stone, the Void Set passive, and Adrenaline. Damage taken when aiming down sights will be blocked by a shield bar, the capacity of which is determined by the number of pieces you have equipped, your total stamina, and stamina cost. This effect allows you to potentially tank a lot of damage. Attacks that would mortally wound you or kill you outright can easily be blocked by simply aiming. After a few seconds of not taking damage, the bar will start to drain. Not aiming down sights makes the bar drain more rapidly. When the bar completely fills, the player will stagger and receive a 10-second debuff. This debuff disables the set bonus. This allows you to move while aiming, but lacks the shield and gun buffs you'd otherwise have. Thankfully, the shield break does prevent damage from leaking through to your health. Keep in mind that the set is 80 pounds, putting it in the ultra heavy category. Having your shield down is a one-way ticket to Flop City, with 6 feet under being the next stop. Some good trinkets to help out with this set are those that boost your stamina, stamina cost, and reduce your encumbrance. Twisted Idol, Leto's Amulet, Rusted Amulet, Heart of the Wolf, Ring of Honor, and Ring of Illusion are great choices. They all help your general mobility, or tankiness when aiming down sights. Moving on to the new trinkets, we have Oxide Charm. This ring makes hits against armored sections deal 3 times more stagger damage. This can help against big guys like the Elite Bury on Rom. You can very easily stagger them with far less shots when hitting their masks. An interesting ring, if a bit niche. There's a chance this one could be changed in the future, so if you have any suggestions for it, hop over to Bolt's Discord. Petrified Bone is a rot lover's best friend. This amulet boosts your rot damage by 20%. It also returns 3% of rot damage done back to the user as health. Were we still in vanilla, this would only have synergy with Spore Bloom and Petrified Maul. Thankfully, with the Hell mod, we have far more options for dealing rot damage. Ashen Mangrove, Blightmaker, and Rot Shot all synergize with it. The damage bonus is very nice, and that lifesteal is incredibly good. If you run Ashen Mangrove, you can further reduce an enemy's rot resistance by 15%, letting you further capitalize on the bonus damage and lifesteal. For all of you rot fans out there, this one's for you. Last of the new trinkets, we have Phasic Amber. This ring grants you a 30-second shield that protects you against one hit upon enemy kill. This even prevents the stagger that would normally come with it. Once the shield is destroyed, the ring goes on cooldown for 15 seconds. If the duration ends via the 30 seconds, the cooldown is not triggered. This ring is very good in ad-heavy fights, and this is Remnant we're talking about, so almost all of them. Being able to take a single hit of anything is awesome, even with the cooldown. If only there was a set that could grant us another form of shielding. Turns out, the Sentinel Set is actually super good with this ring. The shielding you get from your set bonus protects your Phasic Amber shield. This allows you to have an extra shield against multi-hit attacks that would normally break your Sentinel shield. It's a very fun synergy, one you should definitely give a try. While not a new trinket by any means, it's been available for quite a while now. Martyr's Oath is a trinket that I have yet to discuss. This necklace grants the user 50% faster melee attack speed and fire rate while below half health. This works really well in a restriction cord setup. I used it with the Sentinel set and the Ring of the Mantis and got pretty good results. Another fun trinket for reduced health builds. There are some additions regarding courses and challengers. First off is the new guy, the Queensguard. This boss variation of the Swamp Elite enemy is hectic. He's got most of the same moves as the normal knight, with a few twists. His Hammer Slam causes a corrosive blast after hitting the ground. At 75% health, he'll summon a mini army of knights from the ground. Thankfully, they drop pretty easily, but beware of their hammer throws. Once you get him to his last bar, he'll take a knee, and summon a bunch of infected swamp knights and infected swamp elves to his aid. This begins a race against the clock to take him out before he regenerates. Deal with the adds, but don't forget about him. If you fail to defeat him in time, he'll return to half health. Also be wary that he can summon both waves of knights at the same time when at the last quarter threshold. Once defeated, he'll drop some resources to give to McCabe. The Swamp Veer has gotten an upgrade. He's now known as the Corrupted Construct. He has some new moves. He creates Corrosive Fog, like Thrall. He sprays Corrosive Goo, like Iskal Queen. And he channels a big radiation projectile like Shade. This Veer's got it all. Upon defeat, he'll also drop new materials to bring to McCabe. Moving on to the new mods, we have Immolation. This mod surrounds the user with a 5 meter wide flame aura for 30 seconds. This applies burn dots to enemies in the vicinity. On top of that, the user also receives 20% fire resistance and deals 20% more fire damage. It does deal fire damage to the player over the duration, but it's pretty small. Fire res lowers it even more, and a golden plum will make the damage almost unnoticeable. This mod is spicy. In a fire setup, it works wonders for boosting your damage, and the burn stacks you apply to nearby enemies can actually go through walls, and even take out weaker melee units. It's also affected by mod duration, but the cost is so cheap it won't be down for long. Jester's Taunt is an aggro pulling tool. Enemies hit with it will make you their target, and reduce their damage dealt by 25%. If you need to pull a threat off someone, this is your best choice. And finally, while not a new mod, Dragon's Breath has been made a slottable option. Its charge count has also been brought back up to 4. I love this mod on the Alternator, so having it be available on any weapon is amazing. Works really well with a mod spam setup, with Immolation and Charcoal Necklace. There's been a number of significant balance changes too. I'll go over the ones I thought were really cool. Stalker's Brand has received a very nice buff. Along with the other effects it gave before, it now applies a personal Hunter's Mark effect to enemies within 35 meters of you while crouched. On top of that, it also gives you a 10% reload speed buff for 5 seconds after killing a marked enemy. This secondary effect can also be triggered by enemies killed who were marked by Hunter's Mark itself. A welcome change, as it can now help outside of stealth builds. Driftstone has received a new effect. When the wearer slides, they kick up a small 3 meter wave of ice. This deals frost damage and applies 4 stacks of frostbite to those caught in it. This gives a way of applying frostbite to enemies even if you don't have any weapons or mods equipped to do so. A sweet change, and visually cool as well. Flicker Cloak has been shifted towards being an aggressive tanking tool. Base damage dealt now adds to the shield's duration. On heavy-hitting weapons like shotguns, you can easily maintain and rebuild your shield. As long as you can keep up the damage, even the toughest of enemies will have a hard time taking you down. Finally, Jolt Rifle has been reworked. It's now a lightning crossbow mine layer. Bolts stick to the environment and enemies, and detonate when the mod is activated. There is no cost associated with casting it. It's always full. These bolts deal 1.5 times base ranged damage on detonation. Hitting enemies with it applies stacks of conductive, which exponentially increases the shock damage they take for 10 seconds. This effect stacks 5 times. I admit I need to play more with it, but right now the potential is very high. Against Claviger, a 5-stack detonation deals a good chunk of damage to him. With the right setup, I am sure you can annihilate bosses. This was another awesome patch, and I'm glad it came out before the sequel. I'm not sure how much more content will be released for the Hell mod when 2 does come out, but I will be sure to cover it at some point, whenever that may be. If you'd like to download the latest patch, I'll leave a link down in the description to the Nexus page. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.